Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this meeting of Finance and Corporate Services. We have two items on the agenda, and there are no consent items, so we'll get right into the first item, which is the Creative Industry Hub. Just so committee is aware, there is a 10-minute staff presentation on this item, and we do have 4 delegations speaking to it as well. How we're going to handle it is we're going to hear from staff first. We're not going to take any questions at that point, and then we're going to go to the delegations, and we can ask questions of them as they go along, and then hopefully we can ask all of our questions of staff at the end, okay? Okay, very good. Ms. Robson, when you're ready.
Thank you. This is I don't know how many times we've been back to committee on this topic, the Creative Hub, a number of times, and we've been discussing the idea of a Creative Hub, where it might be located, and how it might be operated. And I'm really happy to be back here today sharing with you the progress that we've made on establishing the Creative Hub at 44 Gaukel. For some quick contextualization before I get into our full staff presentation, we're going to be talking a little bit or a lot about the Creative Hub, and then also arts, culture, creative industries, and creative practitioners. And I thought I would just start by saying what we mean when we say those things. It might be helpful. So creative practitioners may be the people that you're thinking of right first off the bat, which include visual artists, theater artists, music, fiber arts, performance. But we're also talking about people who are doing things in the design disciplines like graphic design, industrial design. We're talking about people who are building and producing furniture, jewelry, pottery. We're talking about people who are doing illustration, folks who are doing music production as well as broadcasting. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of an idea of who it is that we're talking about when we say creative practitioners. Additionally, obviously, we'll be talking about the Creative Hub, and I just wanted to say a couple words initially about that. So we have some really great models of hubs in our community. We're most used to seeing them in the context of the technology sector, like the Accelerator Center, who you'll hear from, and Communitech. And when we look at hubs and incubation, really what defines them or what they share in common is access to supportive space. So that at times means affordable space and also means shared amenities, so access to office equipment, internet, security, that type of thing, as well as access to expertise, whether it's legal expertise or HR expertise, and relevant programming. But perhaps the most important component of an incubator space and a hub space is the ability for folks to connect to each other, to collaborate within their sector, across sectors, and really kind of have that fertile ground for innovation and invention. So we've been testing this concept at 44 Gaukel, which you see in the photograph right now, and I'm going to share a little bit with you right now about what we've seen and done so far. So there are a few things that we were responding to in terms of trends and local strengths, and I'll just go over these quickly. So we know there's a global demand for content, and this is easily understood when you look at the amount of stuff that is available for consumption, whether it's books, TV, movies, articles. There is so much content right now, and it's really an insatiable appetite globally. And this has led to growth in the creative industries, and this is part of what we're responding to. The other trend that we've been keeping close proximity on is place competitiveness, and this is a theory that goes that business and investment follow people. We need communities where people want to live because people are the building block of the knowledge-based economy. So creating a place that is compelling for folks is really integral, and we know that creative industries play a role in this. We have many, many local strengths within the creative industries and just in general. We have a deep pool of talent of folks working in a variety of disciplines. We have people who are winning international awards, who are known internationally for their work. There are some that kind of leave this community and come back, and there's a push and a pull, but we know there's a really deep pool. We also know in this community we're really good at cross-sectoral collaboration, and that's a little bit of what I'm going to talk about today, of what's been happening on the second floor of 44 Gaukel between arts and technology. And we also, I don't need to repeat it to you all because you know this quite well, is that this is a community that really understands entrepreneurialism. This is a community that understands what it takes to take an idea to a product to market. And creative practitioners are highly entrepreneurial. They're employed, self-employed at almost double the rate, more than double the rate of the general workforce. So this is a group that also understands entrepreneurialism. So here's a couple of photos, or 4 photos from some of the work that's gone on at 44 Gaukel to date. These are all photos from the second floor of the building. In the top left, you'll see one of the workspaces that is operated by the Accelerator Center. It's a space that was occupied by Alert Labs, who now has graduated out of that program and has taken space in downtown Kitchener. It's now occupied by Inksmith, another Accelerator client. You can see on the right a magnetic board that has the layout of the building on the second floor and the folks who were occupying those spaces. This is a little bit old, so it's a little bit different now, but since we started piloting this project on the second floor in September 2016, there has been full occupancy on the second floor. On the bottom left is a gallery space that was established called the O Gallery, which shows artwork from the community as well as tenants. And then on the bottom, the small rehearsal space that was established, which has been very, very well used, which indicates the kind of demand there is for rehearsal space in this community. So why are we interested in the creative industries? We've been paying attention to the trends, but what else are we looking at? Well, empirically, we know that 630,000 people in Canada are employed in the creative industries. At the same time, we also know that there's a local underrepresentation of folks in this space. And so there is room for growth, and there is opportunity that we're not capturing locally. And again, there's this global demand for talent, so there should only be growth in this sector, and that's what we're looking to achieve. The impact of the creative industries, $54.6 billion worth of activity in Canada annually. We also know from research that the creative industries stimulate innovation across the economy and have a really integral role in placemaking. And you've seen some of that come to bear with the work of the neighborhood strategy. So what is the purpose of our Creative Hub? So the purpose of the Creative Hub is to facilitate the connections between creative practitioners, support success with affordable workspaces, and flexible spaces for events, workshops, rehearsals, and programming. And this is what we've been trying to pilot for the last few months. So I'll show you some examples of those activities. This was a workshop called the Creative Business Design Workshop that was offered in partnership with Artscape, which is an organization out of Toronto that specializes in art spaces, but then also business development for creative business. This was back in November. We had 25 participants and a waiting list. And there's been lots of examples of these types of initiative, and we've also seen that there's lots of demand for it as well. Here are some photos from a theater production called Touch, which was written by local playwright Kieran Myers and produced by Greenlight Arts, who were a tenant on the second floor of the building. And this was a site-specific theater production that tackled the stigma associated with mental health issues. You also see some programming activities going on, public programming activities on the second floor. So you've got some school-age children programming, some art creation programming, as well as a member of the Alert Labs team who has recently moved out, who really specialized their space at 44 Gaukel. So in summation, the services that we're looking at for the Creative Hub is industry development, so providing those and partnering to provide the resources needed to support business development for folks in the creative industries, like the Creative Business Design Workshop I mentioned, supportive space, so again that looks like affordable workspaces, flexible rental space, and access to amenities such as security and internet, and then working with partners to achieve this. We understand that there's so much capacity and expertise in this community, and this approach we feel really makes the best use of all of that expertise. To that end, what we're proposing for you today for the Creative Hub is a partnership model, which would see the city overseeing the operations on the first floor of the Creative Hub in partnership with third-party organizations. And again, this really, we feel, allows for the expertise of the community and to come to bear on the operations of the Creative Hub. This also continues the current momentum that we've seen on the second floor of 44 Gaukel and reduces the implementation time, meaning we can put this building into full use pretty well immediately. I've got some renderings to show you for what the space might look like moving forward. This is the outside again. Here's a visualization of the main floor, and for those of you who haven't been there, it's pretty well completely open on the first floor. So you'll see these partition walls. They're modular partitions that we can use to create smaller spaces on the first floor that then become leasable spaces. We're really excited about a modular opportunity because it can expand and grow with the space needed by specific tenants. And I should also mention, it's in the staff report that we anticipate an annual revenue from leasing out these spaces at about $115,000 annually. Another visualization of the space. And then an overview of the floor plan. And so I'll just draw your attention to the fact that the space in green and yellow, those spaces currently don't exist. It's just an open floor plan. So that modular furniture that we've included in the budget is to make those spaces discrete. So the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve are more jobs in the creative industries, offering some space for creation and in response to the needs that we've heard from our stakeholders, and really developing a model for success that can outlive the 5-year pilot project plan that you see in the report before you. The value of a thriving arts, culture, and creative industry sector is immeasurable. We know there's an economic benefit, which is centered around the industry growth and talent retention. There's a community benefit argument centered around vitality, authenticity, belonging. And there's a deeply personal argument for the value of arts, one that's centered around the transformative power of art to change our thinking, our communities, and our hearts. We have work to do in this community to support the amazing cultural production that's going on here, and we believe the Creative Hub at 44 Gaukel is a way to invest in these ideas, to see return to this community, and to support the creative industries as a valuable economic sector. And really, we're excited to put a city asset into strategic and forward-thinking use. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentation. I do have 3 people in the queue, Councillors Ioannidis, Marsh, and Singh. As I mentioned, we're not going to take questions until after we hear from the 4 delegations, so I've written your names down here if you guys want to click back out, and then you can queue back in if you have any questions for the upcoming delegations, okay? Thank you, Ms. Robson. Our first delegation is Sam Vartenyuk from the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Members of the Finance and Corporate Services Committee, thanks for this opportunity to speak to you about the importance of establishing a creative hub in Kitchener. I'm here representing the city's Arts and Cultural Advisory Committee, which I have the good fortune to serve on as chair. Several of the key arguments in favor of a creative hub have been brought before this committee in the past, and I know you're well aware of the long-term benefits for the community that come from investing in the arts. There's compelling research that suggests for every $1 a community invests in the arts, $1.8 flow back in the form of tourism and other indirect benefits, people choosing to spend their disposable income on local arts and culture. I also know you're aware of the Vibrant City movement and the crucial role that the creative industries play in attracting new residents, people not just looking to relocate for a job, but for a place to live and raise their family. You also know how busy we are at the Registry Theatre, where I'm employed as general manager, an excellent example of what's possible when the city works in partnership with a well-governed nonprofit organization. We've seen local artists like Janice Jolie, alumnus of Kitchener's Artist in Residence program, premiere work on our stage, then develop it with local professional theatre, and she'll shortly present it at Theatre Passe Muraille in Toronto. But of course, there's not as much opportunity for folks like Janice since, due to lack of available space, people need to book dates at the registry at least 18 months in advance. So I'm not here to talk about all the things you already know, but hopefully to share a new perspective that I've had the good fortune to gain after working with some of the exceptional individuals that come through the registry. Truth and reconciliation, LGBTQIA and related communities, the Me Too movement, climate change, equal distribution of wealth, combating racism, sexism, xenophobia and intolerance on all levels, welcoming newcomers to Canada. Debate around these subjects is becoming increasingly polarized. Now more than ever, people need a place to come together, share diverse viewpoints and stories, and approach greater mutual understanding. Ensuring marginalized communities have a voice is not just important, I believe it's a fundamental human right. Too often in the past, we've told ourselves that the mechanisms are there, and that marginalized groups are as free to secure space and host events as anyone else. But the wave of energy around social movements we've witnessed in the past 2 years has forced us to re-examine the apparatus around those mechanisms. How accessible are we really being? How much do our current systems favor the status quo? It's very easy to fall back on time-honored traditions and protocols that, either intentionally or unintentionally, reinforce entrenched power structures. And all of a sudden, the challenge becomes much larger than just renting a theater and putting on a show. In order to truly support all voices, we need to be prepared to take apart our policies and procedures, and in some cases, rebuild them from the ground up. It's tempting to excuse myself from responsibility when it comes to making change. After all, I manage one small theater where I'm the only full-time employee. Working with a few part-time and occasional contractors, a ton of volunteers, and a whole lot of passion. Leave it to the governments and big corporations to lead the way. After all, they have the resources to engage enough diverse humanity to do the work properly and have a meaningful effect. However, in my experience, big things start small. My job is to provide fertile ground where seeds can grow into something massive, providing nourishment, shelter, and strong grounded support. In order to provide that, I have to be prepared to let go of old ways of doing things and set up new, better processes that include everyone. It's not always immediately evident how to do that, and so I have to do a lot of careful listening, learning, and building of new relationships. I have to be prepared to back up and start over from scratch, sometimes again and again. Now that's some pretty heavy lifting, and our arms are tired at the Registry Theatre from our efforts. I don't mean to suggest that we're the only ones doing the work, but due to certain realities around fees, or the lack thereof, policies, or the openness to developing new ones, and general willingness to take a risk on something new, we're one of, if not the only option, for many of our allies. A creative hub, when properly set up and supported by a municipality with one foot firmly planted in altruism and the other in solid financial stability, will be of tremendous benefit to us all. Kitchener prides itself on being a place where innovation thrives, where hard work and an entrepreneurial spirit can yield success on an international scale. We've proven our capacity to support just that, first in the manufacturing sector, now in the field of new technology. Let's not stop there. Let's set ourselves up to be in the vanguard of the emerging and vitally important sector of creating communities that are more fair and accessible to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you kindly for your presentation. Not seeing any. Oh, there we go. Councillor Marsh, question? Oh, hold on one second, Mr. Councillor Marsh, you're right.
Thank you, Sam. What an eloquent, way to start us off on the delegation. So thank you for your very thoughtful words and for your work. I just want to understand, are you fully in support of this model that's being proposed today, or do you have additional comments about it?
From what I've seen of what's been proposed, I think it's an excellent first start. I also believe it's important to allow these things to evolve organically. I do understand the importance of investing wisely, and so I'm in favor of what's been proposed and would like to see reporting structures with everybody, all the stakeholders at the table, to continue to refine what our goals are and how we are achieving them.
Thank you. Yeah, that sounds good.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thanks, Sam. You said something that really kind of resonated with me when you said that it needs to be properly set up with one foot firmly in altruism and the other foot in financial stability. Am I quoting you right? Mm-hmm. Okay. When you say that, and now you just also answered to Councillor Marsh that you think it needs to evolve organically, how do you see the evolution proceeding? Should we engage in a partnership? So what I'm understanding is that there's a private-public partnership possible here. Mm-hmm. How do you see that evolving organically if the city is the only funder? Where would you see other funding come from?
I see all the various stakeholders at the table and discussing that. I see it as premature to go too far with planning before we have those folks at the table. Again, I understand the importance of the city making a wise investment. I, like everybody else, want to make sure my tax dollars are wisely spent. But some of what I'm talking about policies and procedures reinforcing status quo, is part of what we're working on here. New funding models are coming to the fore. Anybody working in the arts will tell you sponsorship is not what it used to be. Crowdfunding is becoming increasingly important. Organizations don't want to just sponsor a thing for the marketing value, but they want their employees to engage in meaningful activities that resonate with their values. So the city provides the beginning that allows us to explore those things, but I am, amongst other things, the financial manager at the registry, and I'm very aware that there's a certain amount of time that you can afford to spend exploring those things, and so a balance has to be struck between taking the appropriate amount of time to make sure people are at the table, but then also figuring out a way to make sure this gains stability going down the road.
Okay, thank you. That's a very impressive and detailed answer. A couple of words that resonate with me when you were talking premature, when you and policies and procedures. So you obviously have a really good understanding of the sort of the yin and the yang, the push and the pull when it comes to running the Registry Theatre, and there's, I mean, they've seen great success with the Lost and Found Theatre and the JM productions. Where do you see the prematurity here? What do you think we should be cognizant of as we take the next steps forward? Are there particular points you can make?
It's going to sound like I'm being too clever by half when I answer this way, but the thing is not to be too hasty in identifying what are the pitfalls, what are the measure of success, but allowing a little bit of time and breathing room for us to foster and cultivate relationships. A situation that I can share is that the registry, JM Drama Alumni, is working in partnership with the Waterloo Crime Prevention Council and the Sexual Assault Centre of Waterloo Region on a piece that will focus on human trafficking in this region. They've received significant funds to support outreach and education, but for them they want some kind of catalyst to crystallize and kick off the conversation locally. And so we've engaged a theatre company from the UK who's written a very compelling piece on this very subject matter after direct engagement with people who've experienced this unfortunate thing. And that is unlocking, because for them, what it costs me to produce a show is a small part of what they would consider an education and outreach budget. When we're talking about funding the arts, we're talking about comparatively small amounts to what you see in other sectors. And I think that there are possibilities there, especially as we engage in conversations like I'm talking about, that are directly addressing issues of importance to the people of Waterloo Region, Kitchener.
Okay. And just quickly, you talk about stakeholders at the table. Can you give me an indication or give us an indication of who you think those stakeholders would be? Obviously the city, maybe the private funder or the private partner?
Yep. So to name a few, the First Nations people from this region, the LGBTQIA community. There's groups doing great work around women's issues, around climate change. People are very active, and we're also experiencing a time where old notions of the cathedral of art is kind of passing, and we're seeing smaller events, broadcasting giving away to narrowcasting and specific communities of interest. Finding everybody who cares about the community we live in and actively working to change it, those are our stakeholders.
Okay, thank you very much for your responses. Time's up.
Sorry, that alarm's never actually gone off before. I was waiting for the fire alarm voice. Anyway, sorry, Sam, there's no further questions. I just have one for you, if you don't mind. I just want to be clear on, I just want to be 100% clear on your intention of coming forward. I just heard the word premature coming forward. Are you 100% in support of the recommendation before us today? You think we should go forward to? Okay, I just want to make sure. So when you're talking about premature, you're talking about as we go through the process, and this may be some sort of interim step. But in terms of what we have before us today, you're not saying we should hold off for a private sector partner or anything like that?
No, I don't believe so. But I believe that there's a 3 to 5 year period where we explore these things and then convene again and have conversations about what's next.
Very good. I thought that was an important point to clarify. Thanks again for taking the time. And again, on behalf of committee here, we do appreciate all the work you do at the registry.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next from Artsbuild Ontario, we have Lindsay Golds.
Thank you for having me here today. So I'm the Executive Director of Arts Build Ontario, and I wanted to speak today on the successes we have experienced at 44 Gaukel, as how well the space like this fits into the bigger picture both locally and within our arts sector. Arts Build Ontario is the only organization mandated to support creative space in Ontario. We provide programs, services, tools, and resources to support the unique needs of our creative spaces. In October 2016, Arts Build took on managing the cultural industry tenants on the second floor of 44 Gaukel, as well as the rentable creative spaces. This has resulted in supporting more affordable space for 14 creative businesses, including 8 organizations and artists that currently work at the second floor. In addition to tenants, we also manage 2 unique spaces, including the O Gallery, which Emily mentioned in her presentation, which has hosted 3 exhibits since 2017, featuring close to 20 artists and hundreds of attendees at their opening events. Our rehearsal space and lounge has totaled over 200 rentable hours since the fall of 2016, averaging about 4 hours per day of rentals. The successes on the second floor and the model of partnering with another organization such as Accelerator Centre has allowed us to use 44 Gaukel as an example in our work as a creative space advocate, including with our Cultural Spaces funder, Canada Cultural Spaces Fund. Given the nature of our organization and our support of creative space, we have established a long-standing relationship with Canada Cultural Spaces Fund. In January of this year, they visited 44 Gaukel to learn about our space, our business model, how we operate, and to further inform their consultation process on how they would continue to fund cultural hubs in Canada. This relationship and this visit is significant, as cultural hubs are now being recognized by federal funders as an integral piece to our ecosystem, in addition to more traditional art spaces. We discussed the successes on the second floor and how we can extend this model to the first floor. Based on the successes of the second floor, we have been able to pilot some space uses on the first floor to understand how the space could be used. To date, the space has been used or booked for student art exhibits, performances, concerts, PD Day theatre camps, film shoots, Kafka art opening, workshops, theatre rehearsals, volunteering, art classes, and meetings. Beyond the activity in the space, it should be noted that we are one of the few, if not the only, art and tech hub in all of Ontario. Through this pilot, we have been able to partner successfully between ABO and the Accelerator Centre in the same space while meeting our respective unique needs. Collaborations, contracts, and partnerships have been explored and executed amongst arts and tech tenants, as we hope that this type of organic synergy can continue on the second floor and on the first floor as new AC companies come and go as they graduate, and as our tenants develop their own relationships. Lastly, as a provincial advocate for creative space, Arts Build is engaged in weekly conversations on the lack of affordable space across our Ontario communities. Our major cities are having to come up with creative solutions to carve out space for our arts and culture organizations and artists, and it is not enough. With the lack of foresight in climbing utility and property tax rates, artists and arts organizations are being forced to leave spaces that they have occupied for decades. Solutions to these issues must include creative thinking and investment on all part of all municipalities. For years, Kitchener has been a leader in innovation and boasts amazing facilities that houses tech companies, co-working spaces, incubators, and think tanks, and not to mention our unique, more traditional art spaces. We encourage our city to apply the same innovative approach to see that the creative sector requires space to create, experiment, and present to contribute to the vibrancy of our community and the enormous growth that we are experiencing as a city. We have the chance here in Kitchener to not only preserve space that has already proven to work, but also to be a leader amongst our Ontario cities and proudly invest in affordable creative spaces, knowing that they are the cornerstone to any nurtured arts and culture scene, and one that is desperately needed and articulated by the growing population here in Kitchener. As a co-manager of the second floor at 44 Gaukel, we wish to continue this great work and see the investment made on the first floor to establish more affordable creative space in the downtown core and be a model for innovative space used for our creative industries. We believe strongly that the value and success on the second floor should continue on to the first floor to provide continued affordable access to creative space for industries and nonprofits.
Thank you kindly for your presentation. We have three people in the queue at the moment with questions, beginning with Councillor Dave Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Lindsay, thanks so much for taking time to come in and speak with us today. This is a unique situation where it is an arts and a tech hub. Could you maybe describe the relationship between the art and the tech sectors of the hub, how they coexist together, how they might inspire each other or work together?
Yeah, and I think that this kind of goes off of what Sam was talking about in terms of things evolving organically. We really didn't know what was going to happen when we first moved in. It was an experiment in and of itself. There was no other hub to compare it to. And so I think the evolution that has worked for Accelerator Centre and Artsbuild specifically, it's a great one of communication and collaboration. So we operate in our own unique spaces so that we don't necessarily share our discrete spaces together, but we certainly share our common spaces and we share the rentable spaces within the space. So I think it's been able to organically evolve into one of mutual respect, understanding kind of what each other does, but it also is based on the relationships within the floor and who's there at the time. So Accelerator Centre has companies that graduate and new ones that come in, and that's an opportunity for them to get to know our tenants. They've certainly resulted in examples of AC companies hiring former arts tenants on contract. It's resulted in, and maybe Karen and Matt will talk about this in a minute, but using one of the company's robotics in a future presentation or play that they might be doing, so they can speak to that. I won't butcher that. But I think it's something that happens. It's based on relationships and it's based on mutual respect and understanding of our own needs and really kind of nurturing that creativity that can happen. And I think it could happen amongst any sector, but here it happens to be tech and arts.
Okay, thank you for that. Another thing you mentioned was that art and tech hubs are now being recognized by federal funding. And I don't really want to put you on the spot here, but with what we have here at 44 Gaukel currently, with the city's investment, do you see this as a candidate that would be appealing for federal funding?
So specifically, culture hubs are being recognized for the first time by Canada Cultural Spaces Fund. As of up until 2017, they actually weren't recognized as a traditional art space. Now that the funding model has changed, they will consider funding cultural hubs. So that's something that they've recently defined, and that's something that if we were to seek funding for them, it wouldn't be operating. It would be, they typically fund things for equipment or construction, but all of those parameters are brand new to this fund, so we would have to look at them more closely, but that's something that definitely should be considered.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez?
Thanks, Lindsay. One of the things that caught my attention was when you said that the rentals were about 4 hours a day.
Yeah.
So that, of course, we wouldn't want to expect people to be rehearsing, midnight to 5 a.m. kind of thing. That still leaves, a good chunk of the day where the space is not, that whatever rehearsal space is available is not being used.
Yeah.
Can you help us understand why that is?
That just has to do with the schedules of our organization. So a lot of them are community-based. So typically they all have full-time jobs and they're rehearsing in the evenings. We definitely do have professional organizations here, such as Greenlight, such as Empty Space. And so they're able to take advantage of the kind of the daily hours. But a lot of our organizations and artists are recent graduates. They work full-time. This is their passion. They're showing up in the evenings and they're doing this until about midnight. So the 4 hours was what we averaged based on since we've been open until now. But based on a study that we did a few years ago, the alternative, some are still rehearsing in basements, people's homes, alternative spaces such as parlors, like things like. So this is an appropriate kind of purpose-built space for them. So I would say 4 hours a day with a very community-based arts community is quite a lot.
Okay, so how would we program or fill the extra hours, or do you see that if we take on the additional space, isn't that going to spread the rehearsal time out even more?
I say that the first floor can accommodate more nonprofits and more different sectors. So Accelerator Center clients absolutely take advantage of the other rooms that we have available for rental, including the first floor as we are piloting. So I think it's appropriate space for workshops, meetings that can be used within the cultural industries, but also to other nonprofits. So I see social being one sector that has expressed great interest in renting the spaces for their workshops that require a little more privacy, and that's been a space that they've used and made use of.
So outside of the fact that community groups are sort of more interested in the same kind of space for rehearsals and things like that, the other concern I heard in the past was the cost of the space.
Yeah.
So how do you envision that changing with this new space coming on stream?
So we based the rates on the second floor at $8 an hour, and that was based on a study that we did a few years ago where the average threshold was about 10 to 11, and we wanted to make sure that it was accessible to our recent graduates, so we lowered it to $8. I think that that's something that we would need to work with the city on the first floor to see what that price point is, but I'd say that we have the research done and we understand what our arts organizations can afford. So maintaining that threshold. We have to understand too that the space isn't coming, or at least the second floor right now, doesn't come with elaborate sound systems or lighting grids. So we can take on that lower rate because we're not offering amenities that need to be secure, that need to have a security guard on site, and that allows us to keep our rates really low. Okay.
In the financial package, there's some high dollars allocated to leasehold improvements. Have you seen that number?
I don't know what exactly the number it is, but I did look at the budget, yes.
Okay, so it's $90,000 for minor interior renovations, but then another $133,000 for modular furnishings, walls, tables, events, and chairs, and projector. But you're also talking about other materials that would
we wouldn't be looking for those for this space. We wouldn't be looking for sound systems or lighting for this particular project. Okay. I don't believe.
Okay. Right? All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, is Arts Build Ontario a provincial agency?
We are a provincial organization, but we're not a provincial agency. We're a nonprofit charitable organization.
Who do you answer to?
We have a board of directors.
And who are they responsible to?
We're a nonprofit, so it's a standalone board of directors, just as the registry. Yeah.
Do you get any funding from the province?
We get $19,578 from the Ontario Arts Council out of a budget of about $450,000. So that's our operating.
Is that $450,000 budget for your across the province, not just for Kitchener?
That's just across the province, yeah.
You mentioned that you manage this space. You manage the space for the city.
Yes.
What does that mean? Do you pay the city a rent and then sublease it to various?
That's correct.
And how does that work? Are you in the black on that, or in the?
Am I, pardon?
Are you in the black on that, or are you in the red?
It depends on if tenants have left or tenants have stayed, and it depends on how many rentals we get, but typically we're just in the black.
So how do you pay the city? What's involved?
So we have a lease arrangement. So the Accelerator Center has a lease signed with the City of Kitchener, and then we sublease from the Accelerator Center, and then we sublease to arts tenants. So that's something that was approved a few years ago through council.
Yeah. So now you've been there for several years now?
Since 2016.
So this is the third year. And what has happened over that period of time? So there's already been a trial of this type of program. So
yeah.
What kind of results have you had?
So just like I mentioned, we've had over 2,000 of rehearsal hours done in the rehearsal space in the lounge. We've supported over 14 creative businesses, 8 of which are still on site. We support a community gallery that rotates 3 times a year to support our local community artists to display and exhibit their artwork on site at no cost.
And over this period, you've been able to break even without having to go to the province or the city for additional funding?
That's correct.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Verbenovich.
Thank you, and thank you very much for coming in today and for making your presentation and for all of the work that you've been doing in terms of bringing this forward. I guess the one question I have is just, and it comes really as a result of an event I attended on the weekend, and it was something involving one of our local animation studios and a young 11-year-old who's well on his way to, he was at Disney last week and got, I think, a gold medal, and he's on his way to Czech Republic and so on. And my sense is that there would be much more opportunity for these kinds of things if we had more space in the community. Is that your sense?
Yeah, I think our hope on the first floor would be to have more of an entrepreneurial approach, which if that meant co-working space, which right now it's discrete tenant spaces. So, we're working alongside each other, but we're not kind of all in one big room. So I think the approach would be to have more kind of the creative industries in one location, and to be able to provide more direct programming that's specific to that industry. So right now it's mostly visual arts and theater, whereas downstairs I think we hope that it would open to more cultural industries, which Emily insinuated would be design and further.
But certainly based on the tour that we had, and I know dialogue I've had in the community, there's a real demand for this,
yes.
Both in the arts and culture sector specifically, but also those who are looking to grow businesses out of it, and sort of the whole startup and scale up kind of
Absolutely, and I think that was seen through the example that Emily gave with Artscape coming to Kitchener to do a creative business. It's a workshop on starting a creative business, and then a second one was done by Work and Culture just a month later, and same thing, they also sold out. So that's telling us that this type of information and this type of development is really needed in the community, and this could be a space where it could be held in an affordable manner.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you. And finally, Councillor Singh.
Yes, just very quickly, some clarification, but first, just from your answers alone, questions asked by Councillor Gazzola, it just appears the collaborative approach between arts organization and the tech industry is already working. Yeah. That's already been presented, it's already been established. Yeah. And through your answers, it shows that your organization as a standalone is fairly efficient in ensuring that it's providing the necessary benefit to the arts community, while at the same time being financially manageable as well. So, and that gives confidence a little bit, quite a bit actually, in us looking at broadening that space even more. You said something about funding, that there could be more grants available. Now, is that correct? There could be more opportunities for...
The grants would be towards things like construction and equipment. They don't like operating. So this is where the municipality comes in, that our federal funders, our provincial funders look at project-based funding versus actual ongoing operating.
And I appreciate that. Yeah. And to achieve your full intent on servicing the arts community, there's costs related to equipment. Exactly. But you're saying that there is greater confidence that you can access outside funding to achieve those goals.
I believe so. With the new model that Cultural Spaces Fund has put forward, I believe that we have an opportunity there to put something forward. Ontario Trillium Foundation also has a capital fund program. So now there's a lot of criteria that are based, so how long the lease is, things like that. There's a lot of nitty gritty, but there is opportunity.
Well, we can't predict everything,
exactly.
Like most things.
Yeah.
So, but the opportunity is real.
Yeah.
This equipment that could be accessed through these grants, that could be cross benefit to the tech community as well? They could have leverage on that.
It would have to depend on what we're looking for and what we're looking at. It would be specific to if it was us that did the application as a charitable organization, we would need to justify the type of equipment and why our organization would be looking for specific types. So that's something, again, that we would need to review with our partners to make sure that it was applicable.
With this broader spaces of upstairs and now possible expansion downstairs, with the complete end of the 5-year, would you say in your assessment that would give a clear indication that like an arts hub as a creative space is established in our community at that point? Right now, it's fairly smaller space with, in conjunction with Auxiliary Center upstairs, but with more space available downstairs and having more programming available, could you say that we would have that established? The need exists, but the ability to sustain. That's the question right now. And that's where we grapple with, where does the city step in? Where do we put funding when we don't really know if there's a sustainability? Exactly. Could this accomplish or in showing that sustainability is achievable? I
mean, I think that we've demonstrated on the second floor that sustainability is achievable with the support of the municipality, not looking for more, but keeping at the same level. I think opening up to a bigger square, a bigger footprint allows us to demonstrate kind of more uses for the space, but I would say as of right now, we definitely, as the kind of leading advocate for space for creative space in Ontario, we refer to 44 as a cultural hub here in Kitchener. I think we've demonstrated the success and being able to talk to cultural spaces about it and being able to understand other hub models. I think we have a really smart one here that we've put together and that we've been able to pilot upstairs, show that downstairs can grow. Now, the longevity of the building right now is unknown, but I think that we've established that the community here needs this type of space. So whether it stays at 44 or moves to another building, I think it's there.
We do have a really smart collaborative situation put together, and we need to leverage on that more. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, next up is Councillor Etherington.
Just one quick question. Thanks for coming in. I was really impressed by the recent tour we did of 44 Gaukel, which is in my ward. The arts culture that you deal with, there's a lot of talk about affordability. Do they tell you your space is affordable?
Do they tell us if the space is affordable? I mean, we have a tenant here that might be speaking, so maybe they can speak during their delegation on affordability. Certainly, the experience that we've had I mentioned we've had 14 creative businesses and we have 8 on site, so that has left us some moving in and out. And what it's told us is our rates are affordable, but our income for our artists and our arts organizations is not consistent. So while they could afford it, for 6 months of the year, they couldn't afford it for the latter half because they may not have gotten a grant or they weren't able to sell, whatever the case may be. So I think we've hit the price points correctly, but there's a bigger sector-wide issue, which is operating funding, which would allow you to pay for rent. So, yeah.
And as far as the building is concerned, and you mentioned the time the building perhaps will be there. Into the future, do you do any planning for where you would go if that building suddenly disappeared?
I think that's more of a question for the city staff. I'm not sure that we'd be involved in that piece, but we like our location very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And sir, one last question, Councillor Marsh.
I feel for you. I hope that you can sit down soon. But I'm prolonging it, so I apologize. I just wonder, has there ever been any question about this unique hub between the tech sector and the creative industries sector? We're right now just focused on the creative industries portion of it, but we do, of course, have, I'm sure we'll be hearing from Accelerator Center as well. Is there ever any sort of desire to see either what are the benefits of maintaining that relationship, or what would be the benefits of perhaps having a creative industries only hub?
I think that's a good question, and I think we've never been given any reason to question or to separate the partnership at this stage. I think it's gone really well. I think it's also something to be said about the community that we live in, that we take this step and we take this approach to see if it can work, because that's the community we live in. I think if we're looking at every community is different, and that's something that we've realized. We've been studying hubs for quite some time and looking at what hubs look like in Toronto, very different than what a hub is going to look like in Hamilton or up north or, you know, in the Muskokas. So I think this is what our hub looks like here. So I think that for us, there wouldn't be any reason to change the arrangement. As I said, we've been able to take care of our own needs while working alongside each other, which I don't think either of our organizations knew what we were getting into, and it's resulted in something very positive rather than, I would never question it at this stage.
Great. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think I have Councillor Singh for a second round question. Go ahead.
No, not necessarily a question, but Councillor Etherington raised a good point in bringing to light about beyond the 5 years. I did have an amendment, so I thought I mentioned that. So once the discussion is over, in referencing that our staff need to consider looking at that. So I'll bring that forward once it's moved.
Very good. Noted. Thank you. Okay, Ms. Golds, thank you very kindly for coming in. You got a few more questions than I think maybe you expected, but we appreciate your point of view. Next, from Greenlight Arts, we have Mr. Matt White. Sorry, it's Matt White from Greenlight Arts.
Thank you. It's Matt and Karen from Greenlight Arts.
I see he forgot to add my name.
Yeah, I did. Sorry. We are speaking today about giving context as to who we are and why we support the motion as it currently stands. I last spoke to you back when the discussion was going on about whether to move forward with 44 Gaukel.
And you did it! Yay!
Yay! Thank you. You gave us a chance to test things out. And we are enjoying every moment of being there. Greenlight Arts, so now the context about who we are. Greenlight Arts is a professional theatre company based in Kitchener, serving the Waterloo region, run by myself. I'm the artistic director, producer.
And Karen Larson, the managing director.
We produce theatrical productions, arts education programs, and community building events. Our work is bold, contemporary, and rooted in using art to make the world a better place, and hopefully entertaining you. We founded the company in 2014, moved into 44 Gaukel in 2016, and to date we have produced over 15 theatrical projects. The productions we have done have explored everything from mental health, the plight of women in prison, to forgiveness and racial justice. We have put audiences in shipping containers and hospital gowns, not at the same time. And we've also built a tent at 44 Gaukel where we did the show Touch that you saw as part of Emily's presentation. We've also created Andy Warhol's Silver Factory. We do lots of interesting different pieces. And we've actually also even packed this very council chambers for a benefit performance of the Vagina Monologues. That was us. We will make you laugh, we make you cry, we sometimes make you feel a bit uncomfortable. We bring shows here from Toronto and are taking 2 plays there next year, including the one that Sam had mentioned, Janice Jolie's Will You Be My Friend, which we're picked up by Theatre Passe Muraille and are presenting there in October, as well as a show at the Tarragon Theatre. And we even teach your kids. We do the PD Day programming that takes over 44 Gaukel on PD Days. Our philosophy is that theatre alone cannot change the world. However, it can create the opportunity for people to see the world in a different way, to learn something about the world, about themselves, in a way that they didn't necessarily know before. And as part of that, we also work with a lot of local not-for-profit organizations, including community justice initiatives and House of Friendship. We build bridges between artists and community leaders and organizations doing incredible work here and are helping develop and foster the arts and culture industry in the region.
44 Gaukel has incubated our theatre company for 2 years, and it has fundamentally catalyzed its growth and capacity. It significantly reduces our overhead so that we can funnel our resources and time into our artistic projects. In 2017-18 alone, we were able to produce 6 theatrical projects and 2 education programs, and we are 2 people plus additional staff, temporary staff. Nowhere else in this city, in this region, could we have access to this level of affordable office space, access to meeting and creation spaces, internet, other amenities. And I want to say that you also could not have planned for the community that has developed out of 44 Gaukel by mashing together tech companies and arts companies. It has afforded us to build amazing relationships with the tenants that are there. We have great allyships and friendships with Arts Build Ontario, 8 Man Can, Artshine, Inksmith, and with past tenants as well, Hive, Finscott Films, organizations that we partner with on a regular basis and use as an advisory to check our blind spots, which is really important when you're in your sector, that you don't just stay in your silo of information, but you expand outwards to see how you're communicating with the public and the general public. The common traits that we share as creative industry are that we are idea people. We're problem solvers who are all very industrious at making things happen even when resources are few. So put us in a building together and we come up with awesome things. So, for example, when we changed or repurposed the main floor of 44 Gaukel into a performance space by partnering with Critical Media Labs and Inksmith, who let us use their space and materials to build our set. Or running PD Day programs, which has seen over 175 kids registered through that program in the last year and a half.
I know that our time is running out, so I'm going to jump in with the aforementioned, the partnership, the correlation, the great ideas mixing together with Inksmith from the Accelerator Center. From the Play Touch, we started a conversation about a potential future collaboration where we're actually going to be working with them to create a play that will also integrate their technology and the work that they're doing with robotics. It'll be, right now, it's looking like it'll be the first play in Canada that could actually incorporate a robot. Not that we're saying anything yet. We have to build it first. But these are the possibilities that you can't necessarily plan for. When you put everything together, it takes a lot of different things to come to fruition, to make the magic happen. But it's about taking that first chance to put us together to make magic happen.
And all of this to say that, yes, we're benefiting right now from 44 Gaukel, but really it's about incubating or laying the groundwork to build an entire ecosystem of creative industry. So that regardless of whether we have 44 Gaukel in the long term, we will have built up and made the sector so strong that it's kind of like training for the Olympics, right? The Olympics are a couple of years away, and you invest in your athletes right now so that they have the capacity to really make amazing things happen in the future. So we see 44 Gaukel very much as an incubating ground, as a place for laying down the work for an entire ecosystem of creative industry.
If there's any more time, is there any more time?
You can wrap it up, please. Yes.
Okay. The last point. Just coming from the announcement from the museum this morning, the museum and BMO's partnership, and so excited about the investment and growth that we're seeing in the local arts and culture community. And we see 44 Gaukel in a similar way for the independent artists, the smaller companies that are here, as it gives them a space, it gives them a home, it gives them a place. It's not saying that one or the other, it's saying all of the above. And so that when we start out at 44 Gaukel, maybe eventually one of those artists will end up at the museum. And it's about seeing how we have a whole city filled with these types of foundation spaces.
Okay, thank you very kindly for your presentation. We have 4 people in the queue with questions at the moment, starting with Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and thanks Karen and Matt for coming in. you guys come a long way since I think your first production of the Amish project that I saw, which was actually very fabulous. So it's good to see that the space is cultivating some the growth of your company. I guess the question that I would like to ask is, do you have since I know you two are the only ones that are working full time on Greenlight Arts, can you quantify the amount of jobs that were created through all your productions?
Absolutely. So this past season, we run from July 1st until June 30th. That's our season, and we were able to create 66 arts jobs this past season for a couple of months at a time. But that's 66 arts jobs from our little company. Yeah.
And including, even with a solo show, we employ 15 different people to do that one person, the Janice Lee show.
Which includes designers, technicians, crew.
Yeah. We also are proud to say we have a summer works through the city, through the Canadian government. You know better than I do.
Oh, we have a summer job student, yeah.
But it was big time. We now finally have someone else in the office, so.
Full-time.
Yeah. Yay!
Wow, that's great. Congratulations. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, thank you. So a couple of questions. I'm understanding from your presentation that you're mainly working within the theatre, so play productions, dialogues kind of thing. Is that correct? Is that a correct understanding?
Performing arts, yes.
Okay, performing arts. Okay, thank you for that. That's a better description. And it is interesting to see that you've been doing some school programming, but I wonder if if you feel that there's a possibility you may be taking away from other spaces that are doing children's programming, or was your children's programming booked solid with a waiting list and you could have maybe passed off to another theatre company and said, hey guys, we've got 30 kids who would love to do something?
Well, we like to think that our programming is quite unique. It's a play building day. We have had wait lists every single session that we've run, and we were able to secure additional funding so that we could do satellite programs. So we have a partnership with 3 other community centers in Kitchener to offer that same program for free to their communities. And so, yeah, it is a unique program in that the children build a play in a day and develop all of these performing arts skills. And we're able to run 4 locations every single time there's a PD day, according to the Waterloo Region District School Board's calendar.
Okay, so do you focus only on PD days, or are you hoping to expand this through summer programs?
Because we produce so many projects, and we're trying to focus on what is manageable for us at this point in our growth. So we had an after-school theatre training program for a while, but yes, right now we're focusing on the PD Day program because it's a model that works, and also it doesn't exhaust us too much to balance that with our theatrical projects.
Understandable, yes. It takes a lot of energy to put on a production. You talked about 66 arts jobs. Now, I would assume they were sort of contractual or around that particular production. Where do you see those people going after you're done your production? Mm-hmm. Are they, because of course it's not full-time work, which means there's no benefits, and they know that they've got, let's just say 8 weeks, and I could be completely wrong, and that's how long it takes. But after that, where do you see these people going?
Well,
do they go back to their Starbucks job, or do they go back to school? Or?
Well, that is the culture of the arts, of the performing arts industry. We work with professional artists predominantly, but we are considered an indie organization, and so our relationship with the association that governs producing theatre companies allows us to work with both professional and non-professional artists. So we provide professional experiences for up-and-coming artists, and allow them to get some things on the resume that then project them into other productions, both locally and outside of the region. It is the case, though, that professional artists tend to be booked contractually for 6 to 8 weeks at a time, or from 6 to 3 to 4 months at a time. On average, we tend to contract designers for about 4 months at a time. Okay. And I'd say about 75% of our operating budget goes to paying for programming costs and for these professional fees and salaries.
Okay. So one more question. Where do you see, let me backtrack. Do you see yourselves as a non-for-profit, or do you see yourself as a revenue-generating business?
We are a non-for-profit that is very good at spending money properly.
At not spending it,
at staying within our budget. We are a non-for-profit that are looking to eventually become charitable because all of the programming that we do serves charitable means. But the way that we have our revenue come into the company is a combination of public funding, private funding, plus earned revenue, ticket sales, and costs for attending the arts education programs.
So when you said that you want to become charitable because you feel you're doing work within the community, so some of your partnerships would be around, the name just escaped me, our justice program, sorry.
Community justice
initiatives.
Thank you. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where you see the direction of your company going, mainly around those kind of productions and that kind of workshops and community building.
Yeah, we one of the other tenets of our organization is something called Fuel, which are outreach initiative conversations or podcasts, post-show talks, working within different communities, so that there is very much that sense of trying to, we left Toronto in 2014 to create a theater that we hope produces work that can help make the world a better place in our own little way. It's not to say that we will stop anything, but if we can change people's behavior, or at least make people consciously aware of something. So if it is with the show that the Tarragon Theatre is producing with us, that is about women in Canada's correctional system. We developed it, and Tarragon loved it so much that they wanted to put it as part of their season. And that's the organization with community justice initiatives, trying to get that conversation going around how do we destigmatize the system, how do we destigmatize people who are going through the system, and also creating the conversations between restorative justice as well as, there's giving voice to what it's actually like also to be a guard within the system. So it's trying to create taking a look at all different facets, taking it from different angles.
But yeah, our theater is community focused, definitely, and the bread and butter of our productions is being informed by community partners that are experts in these areas. And sometimes we come up with the themes and we say, hey, we want to do a play about this, who are our partners? But a lot of the time we develop partnerships with people and we say, what is the community's need from your organizational viewpoint? Let's make some theater about it, because art can be a tremendous tool for positive social change.
Right. Thank you very much for your responses, and you actually answered a question about why did you start this without even me asking, so thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, there are still 4 people in the queue, and we are starting to run a bit low on time here, so I'd ask we could be a little bit succinct in our questioning. Councillor Yaneski.
Yeah, thank you. You noted that you had some performances that you performed in is this all within the 44 Gaukel building?
No. Some of our productions require lighting grids and sound systems, as Lindsay was speaking to. Because we do both traditional and non-traditional work, our traditional work tends to take place in theatre venues like the Registry Theatre. We tend to rent out quite frequently. We've also used the Conrad Centre, KW Little Theatre, a number of different places. We're very adaptive that way.
So when you're at the Registry Theatre, you charge admission and...
Oh, yes.
And so how much of the revenue you receive from admission charges, how much does that give you in terms of a budget?
Approximately 32% of our overall budget, our overall revenue, comes from ticket sales.
How big of attendance do you get at some of these performances?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
How much of an attendance do you get at some of these performances? I guess it depends on what you're putting on, but how little do you get, or how much maximum groups do you sell out?
Yes, actually, sometimes we're very lucky and we do sell out. The show Touch that was mentioned that we did do at 44 Gaukel by repurposing the main floor sold at 105%. We had to squeeze in extra chairs. It was a small capacity, but over the course of 10 or 11 performances, we had to turn people away or say, oh, sorry, we'll bring it back, or hey, can you stand, or can you squeeze into this spot here?
The same thing happened when we did the Amish project. We did a 3-city tour of the Amish project, and it was the second time we had actually produced it here. And by the end of the run, we were selling out the run up in St. Jacobs. We did it in the old schoolhouse theater space up there.
And
we reconfigured the space and actually had to add performances. A lot of the challenges in the region are if you have a short run, it's harder to sell early. So we try to be imaginative with how we structure. The next show that we're doing, it's called Seventh Cousins, which will be at Conrad Grable Chapel, about two cousins who walked 700 kilometers from Pennsylvania to Waterloo. And I'm taking Valerie Hill from the record to Toronto to see a performance of it so she can write about it here before the run, because the run starts on a Friday, so she wouldn't be able to write about it. So we're enterprising and inventive and find new ways to try and get the word out.
But we do tend to see an increase in ticket sales when we are able to run a show a little bit longer than, say, 4 performances. 2 weeks seems to be a pretty good measure of that.
One other question. You also provide teaching for people wanting to get involved in the theater and stuff like that. Do you charge for them to participate? Is there like a membership fee or anything of that nature, or is it just a free join and come on and work with us?
So that is a very organic thing that happens at our office. So Matt and I are both committed to mentoring the next generation of arts administrators and artists. And so we often dedicate our time for free to work with playwrights or to dramaturg somebody's piece of work. I tend to focus more on office administration and financial management. So we have a kind of like a parade of volunteer students that come in and out of our work environment to learn about what we have to offer.
But the kids who are part of the PD Day program that we run at 44 Gaukel, their parents pay for that. Mm-hmm. And then the program that we run at the city at Kingsdale and Chandler Mowat and Centerville Chicopee, that's free to participate.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Schneider?
Thank you, Chair Davey. One of the things you mentioned is the ability that you have, because you're in the Creative Hub, you have some savings there that allow you to put your resources in other places. Can you tell us some of those places where those resources get to go?
Oh, absolutely. I'll answer this question by explaining my circumstance when I was in Toronto. I was running a theatre company called Fujian, and we had quite a high overhead. Most of our operating budget went to 3 things: our internet and phone bill, our rent at the church that we were housed in, and insurance. And that because it ate up so much of our operating, it put an immense pressure on us to do fundraising and through sponsorship and public funding. But here, we have that edge taken off because we have this wonderful rent rate at 44 Gaukel and access to internet and access to other amenities within the building, and a rehearsal hall that's right there that's $8 an hour, which is incredibly affordable. So because we're such a small company and still considered a startup, we've been able to do a lot in a small amount of time because we have these overhead costs subsidized.
So part of it would be even taking on projects. So something like being able to do Touch is because of certain things like having the internet and the space covered. Also, it lends credibility to our organization because we're not operating out of our house. And when we can have meetings, we don't always have to have meetings at coffee shops. We can have a meeting at 44 Gaukel, and we have letterhead that says 44 Gaukel. When we're bringing artists in from Toronto, they can just jump off the bus and come to 44 Gaukel, and so there's a lot of different ways that it helps.
Great. Now, the other thing that was really exciting to me is this collaboration you're going to have with Inksmith from Accelerator. And I love the comment you had. There's so many things that you can't plan for. So can you foresee any other possible opportunities that, I mean, being that you can't plan for them, you can't see the future, but just talk of the potential of collaboration between Accelerator and arts?
Well, I think the biggest thing in terms of the potential is the fact that we are in the same space so that we can have lunch together even without planning to have lunch together. And then what we do is we just end up having random conversations. And like even with Alert Labs, they graduated from the Accelerator Center from 44 Gaukel, and being able to talk to them just about life. And they had some of their kids would come and do our PD Day program. And so it's one of those things where once you learn about the different companies, and because the thing is like we spend so much time living in silos and thinking that we're all these separate individuals, when really we're all just trying to survive. And we're all just trying to live, and we're all just trying to get our ideas out there and express things and try and work together. And so what is great is by having this opportunity to be rubbing shoulders all the time without having some sort of prescriptive, like, let's have this conversation that could lead to nowhere, but it's just sort of like, hey, you like baseball? I like baseball. Why don't we do a play about baseball, or a movie?
I'm going to give a really specific example of something that actually happened in the last year. We presented a show called A Very Layla Christmas, a very fun holiday show, very non-traditional. And basically over the canteen, over drinking coffee, we managed to get a group of the 44 Gaukelites to attend the show as a pseudo office party. And so that was a small little connection that we couldn't have made had we not been in the right place at the right time. And I also vividly remember reading portions of Grant narrative and also saying, what do you think of this idea, to some of the tech companies that were also having lunch or in the meeting room together, and them saying, I don't understand what you're talking about, and this informing us about how we should talk to people outside of the arts organization, outside of the arts sector, about what our ideas are so that they understand and want to be a part of those ideas. And the same vice versa. We like to think that we bring a lot of whimsy and enthusiasm to 44 Gaukel with our arts stuff.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I just made a note of Gaukelites. I wrote that down. Councillor Gazzola?
You just mentioned a few minutes ago about performances or things that you do for our community centers, and they're free for the participants, but do you get reimbursed for your efforts?
Well, so in terms of the PD Day program that's offered at the 3 community centers, that is funded by the Kitchener-Waterloo Community Foundation. So they are providing the upfront costs for hiring the instructors and the supplies, and so it pays for itself, but it is therefore offered or subsidized to the people that participate.
Now, you stated that you're both, this is a full-time job for both of you.
For us too, yes.
Do you have time? Is it a full-time commitment for everything? What I'm asking, are you able to make a living doing this?
Yes. It's not maybe a glamorous living, and we certainly, I teach, I'm a movement specialist outside, and we both teach at the University of Waterloo on contract to subsidize our company as we're building it. Remember, we're a startup company, so the first 7 years of an arts organization is always quite an effort of faith and vision. Yeah. So we're still in that space, but we are making it work.
No, so you are doing more than one job. That's what I was trying to drive at. You're going through an incubation period. You have been for 2 years. When is incubation over, and what comes after that?
When is incubation time over?
Yes. This is what we're looking at here is an incubator.
Yeah.
So how long does an incubator go on, and what comes on after that? Do you see yourself here for 5 years, 10 years in this role, or do you move on to something else?
Well, we're very committed to the region, so we will always be here building our brand and building our organization. I think that it's important to look at the word incubator like a concept, that it's a concept of always trying to find the next thing that propels the industry forward. And so that's how I look at the incubation aspect of what we're calling or how we're branding 44 Gaukel in the moment. I mean, when... go ahead.
Sorry. I think the other thing, too, is to keep in mind that, hopefully we will graduate in the same way that Alert Labs graduated from the Accelerator Center, that eventually Inksmith will probably graduate from the Accelerator Center, that eventually, hopefully, our hopefully we will multiply and have more full-time staff, and that eventually we will have a different location. But the thing is that there will hopefully be the need for another organization to fill the space that we held.
And then in our role as graduates of this incubation period, we'll then be able to offer work and expertise to the next generation coming up underneath us so that our sector continues to build and build.
That's right.
I appreciate your comments, and that's what I was looking for. It's like having children at home. Eventually we're hoping that they graduate and move on.
Yeah.
So, and I can see where you're going. And I do commend you. I applaud you for your commitment and your enthusiasm and your energies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, those are all the questions. Thanks, Matt and Karen, for coming in, and I look forward to the baseball play.
Yes.
Okay, our final delegation is Paul Salvini from the Accelerator Center.
Great, thank you very much. I'm Paul Salvini, the CEO of the Accelerator Center, and really happy to be here in support of the staff recommendation. I spent the majority of my career building creative organizations that live at that intersection between art and technology and business, and that's really what I want to talk about. Had a great relationship with the City of Kitchener in putting together 44 Gaukel being our home for our Hardware Innovation Lab. Prior to that facility, we had robots and other things running around our office space in the research park, and as you can imagine, they would have to take over the hallways at night and do things like that. So it's fantastic to have a facility that allows people to do slightly different things in that. I'm also glad some of you had a chance to tour the facility a few weeks ago and see the kinds of companies that we have there and the work that is going on. Since we've opened that facility, we've had 12 companies join the program there, one who has graduated, which you've heard is Alert Labs, and if you went to their open house and their tour, you see the kind of incredible momentum that these companies can have as they leave the facility and set up shop within the City of Kitchener. You're also going to see Rapid Novar grow and leave the facility as they graduate later this year, and another incredible company coming out of that facility. So far, we've already generated, just with those 12 companies, 125 full-time equivalent jobs. They've generated $3.5 million in revenue and almost $3 million of investment. You'll also see other AC grads within the City of Kitchener that are emerging out of our other facilities, companies like Myovision and KIK and ClearPath Robotics as well. And collectively, those 59 graduates have created almost $3 billion in corporate value, which is quite a remarkable piece of growth. I'm here to talk about that intersection today between technology and business and arts and creativity, because a lot of times people wonder, how are they connected and what is that piece? You've already heard about the importance of the creative industries in terms of placemaking, but I want to talk about creativity in terms of the importance of building any company these days that involves technology and business. And there was a time when you could just build a great piece of technology, and if it was so novel and so awesome, it would sell itself. Those were great days. And then after a while, you needed business savvy. You needed to be as innovative in the business models you created in your company as you were with technology. And today, businesses need more than just technology and business. They also need the arts. They need the human element. They need design. They need user experiences that are unbelievable. If it's a physical product, that the design and experience that you have for that product really matters. You know, we talk about whether it's autonomous vehicles or robots or any of the kinds of things that are emerging in the future. Imagine those without the role of arts and the role of creativity in putting them together. Anytime you experience a device today, whether it's a smartphone or another piece of technology that you love, the bit that you probably love about it is the design. It's the creative piece. It's the part that makes it more than just technology with a clever business model. one of the things that we've been doing at the Accelerator Center is to provide more and more design services to our founders who are largely coming from a technology background. And so in the early days, our mentorship was to work with technology founders and say, you really need to bring some business thinking into your company to understand how to create an innovative business model in order to sell your product. And today it's all about design, and so we've created something called the Startup Studio. It's a collection of designers, creative people, artists that are coming from a number of our academic institutions. They're providing design services into our startup companies to make sure that whatever products that our companies are creating, whatever experiences our companies are creating, that they truly are going to be world-class. And I think for me, that's that important intersection that you were asking about, is where does art meet design, does it meet, technology and business? And it's precisely that. It's about creating the kinds of products that are going to be globally competitive and allow us to sell into an export economy. So I'll leave it there. Pretty excited about what this opportunity is for us.
Very good. Thank you for your presentation. First question, Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, and leave it to you that you would totally expect the type of questions we would ask, and your presentation already kind of answered most of them. It was going to really go into why is it necessary to have that convergence, that interaction of tech and design and arts, and you've said it already, so thank you for that. I'll go into a little bit more. Apart from having services like the Startup Studio, which does provide design services to the tech companies that are part of the Accelerator Center. But how crucial is everyday conversation, where you do have that interaction with people that are creative, doing their own thing in the arts field, while you got the programmers, the designers, the engineers creating amazing tech. How important is that ongoing day-to-day conversation in that convergence space?
Great question. It's really important. One of the best things we do in any incubator or accelerator is to provide that mixing ground for people. And even if you look at the language at our universities, it went from thinking about being transdisciplinary, where I'll take my skills as a software developer and apply it to the film industry. That would be a transdisciplinary approach. Then we talked about multidisciplinary, where we take people from different backgrounds, maybe a business person, a technology person, and a designer, put them together, and they would each bring their own expertise to some part of the project. And today we really talk about interdisciplinary, where it's the requirement of a fusion of those skills at every iterative step of product and company development that's important. It's unbelievable if you walk in our facility. I think part of the strength is to be able to sit down at a lunch table and be beside somebody in a completely different industry, and that's exactly where those conversations happen about, hey, I happen to be developing this technology, what network technology should I use, because maybe that person had no expertise in that area, or what do you think about the design of this piece? Or you'll see people get into a debate about, I'm developing some autonomous vehicle technology, and do I distinguish between a dog running out in the road versus a squirrel running around out into the road in terms of how much avoidance and how aggressive I need to be in my response? Those kinds of conversations, that's where you don't know where the answer or where the background or where the knowledge is going to come from, and having that fully interdisciplinary, integrated group of individuals who are creative thinkers, innovators, entrepreneurs, all in one place, it's pretty special. So it's critical to have that together.
Okay, so the Accelerator Center in the Research Park in Waterloo, compared to space there and space here, do you guys have that same type of convergence there? Is there an arts community that's involved part of the space there, or is this unique to here on Gaukel Street?
I think what you have here is unique. I mean, every space is slightly different in terms of the mix of those three elements. So we have a fair bit of design and user experience in the Research Park, but we don't have pure art and pure technology. I came from a background of photography and cinematography applied to visual effects and film. Being with those kinds of creative people, the true creatives, the true artists, it's an unbelievable experience. And so I'd say you have much closer to that in Kitchener, where you have people that are really exploring creativity in really interesting ways. That's unique. That's pretty special and really, really important. I know some of the conversations I had with George at Alert Labs talked about the whole camera culture piece and that artistic view of things and how things were perceived. That's reflected in their website and all of their pitches and presentations. You can see the influence that that's had on George and his company.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you, Paul, and certainly the enthusiasm of all the delegations today is it's hard to resist. I'm just going to bring you down a little bit, not just because I think we have to deal with practical as well as the whimsy and the enthusiasm and the excitement. So you're talking about these collisions of sectors at lunchtimes, and I think that's fabulous. I mean, anytime people get together and have a conversation about something, if I'm if I teach kids and somebody else has a specialty in autism and we collide together at a party or an event, that we gain knowledge. But the one thing that might concern me a little bit is I'm going to relate it to if I was at that collision and that lunchtime and there was a doctor sitting there who has spent hundreds of thousands of dollars educating himself, and now I'm kind of asking him for free advice. How do you put a dollar amount around the collision of a designer, a graphic designer, for example, talking to somebody from one of your technology businesses? Because yes, it's good for the conversation, but where's the payout for that graphic designer who gives the advice to that technology business and they run with it? And wait a minute, the graphic designer is saying, well, hold on, that was my design. We kind of just talked about it. Yeah. See where I'm going?
Yeah, I think it's it's about people being able to get outside of what they do on a day-to-day basis, and many times you'll find I have lots of conversations with people in very, very different industries that are absolutely fascinated about with lots of doctor friends who are fascinated about what's happening in quantum technology, what's happening in nanotechnology, and being able to get outside of what you do on a day-to-day basis and learn new things, and then be able to contribute a little bit with what you know and see if there's an intersection of technology. I think that's where it's valuable. It's not about fee for service and billing. It's about just the mindset. It's about being exposed to individuals who think differently. I graduated not that long ago, well, maybe it is now, but anyway, with a business degree, and at the time there was no design thinking and there really wasn't that element of creativity applied to the degree. Now it's a key part of the curriculum of an MBA, certainly at Rotman. So it's interesting that those things that appear to be adjacent and those conversations that appear to be not connected or unconnected suddenly become incredibly important. I can always say there were many of my magical times in life were spent with individuals outside of their normal context. When I was learning to fly, I had a great lawyer who was my flight instructor. Well, he was making his $15 or $10 an hour, certainly not his normal billing rate, and yet the incredible conversations and insights that we had over those years together certainly stretched the way I think. I think the other answer I'll say is the reason corporations are coming to this region and setting up innovation centers and innovation shops is they want to be exposed to that thinking. They want to be exposed to that culture and that inspiration. And so they're setting up because when you're working, let's beat up on a bank for a sec, when you're working within the context of a bank, it might be difficult to get out of that mindset of, oh, this is how things have always been done, et cetera, et cetera. But if you really want to free yourself for that and imagine, not something as tight as what will our bank look like in the future, because there might not be a bank, what will banking be in the future? What will the role of banks then be? You have to get out of that environment and get into one that's a little bit more creative, that's going to stretch you, and that's where that exposure to individuals with different backgrounds. I don't know if I answered your question, but
well,
anyway, it's so important.
You did. No, but you did. But I also want to, with respect to artists who, they need to survive. I mean, we've got 2 people here from Greenlight. They need to live. They need to have a place to sit, shelter and food. And those collisions are wonderful, so as long as somebody isn't losing out on an opportunity.
Well, I think it's definitely going to create opportunities. I mean, I've seen tons of examples at the Accelerator Center where individuals with creative backgrounds are hired to do graphic design work, corporate video work, and things that weren't even complicated or weren't even contemplated, initially. Like, it started out with, could you do some photos for me? And then the person said, well, what if we did like a drone footage and whatever else? And it turned out to be an incredible creative project. So I've seen, I think, good examples where the artist ended up benefiting tremendously from that relationship of being exposed to, again, technical and business individuals, because sometimes that's precisely the skill they need, but through their own networks, through their own other life collisions, they don't get exposed to people who actually have the skill and the ability to deliver that for them. And so I think that's where you see natural benefit falling to the artist.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. Paul, thanks so much for coming in. I was really interested when Karen and Matt were up discussing the collaboration with Inksmith, so the production that involves robotics. So beneficial to both Accelerator and to them. Could you foresee, crystal ball, maybe some other possibilities that would be similar to that could benefit both?
For sure. Again, there's no end. And in fact, I think any technology company today is going to benefit, just like they initially didn't think they needed a business person and figured out they did. Companies today are realizing they need creative people within their organization and creative thinking within their organization. So there's no question. I mean, Inksmith, while you think about 3D printers and things like that, what they're really doing is creating curriculum and working on how do you educate teachers and retrain teachers who are working with kids as early as grades 1, 2, and 3 to think about being excited, enthusiastic proponents of STEAM and technology and robots and programming, and bury the idea that that's not fun, or there's no, you don't want to do that, or I hated math when I grew up, or whatever it was that a teacher might have said, to get them to be enthusiastic so that those kids going through school today think, hey, I want to be designing the robots of tomorrow. I have to say, I was at Discovery at OCE in Toronto earlier this year, and Sophie, the robot, was one of the co-hosts, and or Sophia, I think it is. So if Sophia, when you meet her, she remembers you and she gets to know who you are, and she says, Dave, really good to meet you. What's really neat about Sophia is we can back her up, so you can have a backup in case you need a new Sophia, so her memory is never lost. But the cool thing she said was, she had 16 sisters, and if I ever ran into any of her other sisters around the world, like in Hong Kong where their office is, her sister would say, I remember you, Paul, you met my sister in Toronto at the OCE Discovery event. So that's pretty incredible. And when you think about what that company is developing, it's not just a technology platform that's going to have interesting business. It's truly thinking about, what is humanity? What are the risks associated with that? What are the ethics about that? What do we want to have happen? What don't we? This is all within the domain of the social sciences. It's the domain of the humanities and the arts. Every company is going to need to struggle with some of those issues and hire people that really understand what the creative world is about, for sure. So I'll say it's not just a few companies, it really is every company going to the future.
Okay. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. There are 3 people in the queue. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I don't have any deep philosophical questions, just a few. I tried to learn a little bit about Accelerator Center. Is that a local organization?
Yeah, so the Accelerator Center is a not-for-profit that was founded about 12 years ago. We have 5 physical offices. Our headquarters is in the Research Park, and we're the creators of the Accelerator program, and it's licensed around the world, which is maybe why you might see the name associated with other places. So we've been recognized as one of the, well, first of all, the earliest incubators and accelerators, but a very prestigious one in terms of the quality of the programming and mentorship. And so that program has been now licensed by other jurisdictions and other accelerators around the world, but we do own the trademark to it.
You answer to a board of directors, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, where does your funding come from?
So it's a combination of things. About a third of our funding comes from the tenants themselves. They pay a small amount to be within our facility, so it's not free. The remainder of our funding comes from a combination of government funds from all levels of government, as well as from our graduate companies and corporate sponsors that are working with us on innovation topics. So it's sort of a pretty good deal for everyone who's involved in it.
Yeah. At the 44 Gawker, you've been there now for a number of years. Is it 2 or 3 years? Or?
Yes, since 2016.
Yeah, and how does that work? Do you rent space from the city and then sublet it?
Yeah, that's right. So initially we didn't, but now we have a lease from the city, and so we offer space then to our clients, and so they're able to get the space that they need. Typically, when it comes to our clients, we don't rent in terms of square feet or something like that. It really is participation in the program, because we have a curriculum that we work through and mentorship that we provide. It isn't just the space.
So do you pay a market value rent to the city for the space that you use?
So I think we pay below market value probably for that space, and that would be the contribution that the city is making for that space, but it would be hard to know what the market value would be.
Now, with this program that's being recommended here, how does that change things for your organization?
So this program doesn't. This is about animating the main floor of that facility. So we're not directly involved or to be benefiting. For us, the benefit will be more people that we can have these types of collisions and interactions with, opportunities to engage them and create deals and get into different kinds of creative industries than what's existing on the second floor. So it's just an enhancement, but we're not talking about setting up new space other than what we have today on that first floor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Rabinovich.
Thank you very much, and Paul, thank you for coming in. Really just want to use this as an opportunity to thank you and ArtsBuild and Greenlight and Registry. I don't think I missed anybody else. All of you for coming in today and really enlightening council about not only the successes we're seeing at 44 Gawker, but more importantly, just the changes that are happening in the world around us. I think sometimes when you're not in that collaboration space, you don't necessarily appreciate truly the importance of creating this environment for collisions to occur. But it also ends up playing out in terms of the business community around us. So I think you probably are aware of this as well. I mean, there was a company in town a couple of years ago, that was having problems with their security software, and they were basically down for 2 days. Other companies in town, who are in some senses competitors, actually provided staff to have them all come up, because there's this notion that, and I think it's true at 44 Gawker and at the Accelerator Center in general, there's this notion that a rising tide lifts all boats. And so it's not about the advantages of one and who's gaining and who's losing. It's about how do we all actually do better by working together. And I think having all of your perspectives has helped council in that regard.
Okay, thank you. There are no further questions. I just have one. I remember in your previous role, CTO at Christie, when we were talking about some of the economic development issues, one of the things that you mentioned back then even was the desperate need for content creators. And it's interesting that you're now in this role speaking on this item as well. So one of my concerns is always trying to form the whole arts and culture in terms of supporting that scene. Do you see this as supporting our existing businesses within the community, or is it purely going to be a new sort of startup role for these businesses that you think they're going to come out of here?
I think it could be both. I think, when you're talking about the creative industries, it's about building on what you already have, but also attracting individuals to set up shop and take that in a new direction. A simple example will be looking at mixed reality technology, so virtual reality, augmented reality technologies, of which there are a few companies in Kitchener. Those companies require the compelling user experiences to ultimately be created. That's going to require a mix of artists and other people who can imagine what does the ultimate augmented reality experience look like, so that you can be shopping and, see some interesting things in your display. That's what's going to happen, I think, in town, is you're going to have a hub of creative activity, and you're going to enhance existing businesses, but you're also going to create a little bit of a destination for people who are thinking about building businesses that are technology-based, but have a creative element as a place where there's going to be a source of creative talent, because there will be that opportunity to build new jobs and new types of businesses which are mixing technology with creative possibilities. And, like I say, look no further than that whole AR, VR, XR in terms of what this region might see in the next 5 to 10 years becoming very important to it.
Very good. Thank you kindly for coming in, sharing that perspective. Even though you have an indirect stake, I think it means a lot.
Great.
Okay, so I've just been made aware that for our follow-up meeting, we have 6 delegations that are going to be waiting for us, and we're already behind time, so we have to get through this fairly quickly if we can, or make those individuals wait. And there will be an additional item added to CIS as well. So just with that in mind, I had in the queue Councillors Ioannidis, Marsh, and Singh for questions of staff. And Councillor Singh, you mentioned you had an amendment. If you could please put that on the overhead so we can consider it all at once, that would be great. And Councillor Ioannidis, if you could cue in, you were first in line. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chair Davey. For the sake of time, I won't bother asking my question. I'll just move the recommendation.
Very good, thank you. Councillor Marsh, you were next in line. You're going to move it? Okay, very good. Councillor Singh?
My amendment will speak to it, so I think it's fine. It's, for interest of time, same. I'll forego my question. Staff. If I can speak to the amendment?
Please.
Okay. So again, in meeting with staff, as most members of council did, one of the 2 things that popped up in my mind was, I think this is a fantastic idea to move forward, but it is for a 5-year, and something that's good and already has established itself in the second floor, and with continuation space, we can't look in the temporary terms. We have to have a vision outside the 5 years, and I think we can't wait until the end of 5 years. We should start thinking in mid-process. And part of that reasoning is, we shouldn't necessarily think of it trying to do it alone, trying to do it within the strengths of within the community, within the arts community and the tech sector, and us as a municipality. There is funding outside of that. One of the biggest winners out of emerging tech sector or tech economy and the creative economy ends up being the province and the Fed government through the economics that get expanded, with the additional incomes that get formed. So we need to be able to go to those various governments and say, look, we got something amazing happening here, but we need help. And I think that's a conversation that needs to get started well in advance to that end of the 5-year. And that's what the amendment speaks to.
Very good, thank you. Councillor, okay, right now we're only taking questions, no comments. Councillor Fernandez.
Yes, I have a number of questions, please, for staff. Nobody came forward for the original RFP on this, and I'm a little bit concerned as to how are we going to engage another independent private sector to partner us with this, because I think when I look at the budget around a number of items, and I don't feel comfortable with being in a $500,000 deficit. So,
Ms. Robson?
Great, so thank you through the chair. I just want to say that there were respondents to the RFP. There were 2 good proposals, though neither met the financial requirements of the RFP. So that kind of led us down the path to understand what the challenges were with that and to come up with a solution that would address that. So that's, I think, clarifying the first part of your question. Could you repeat the second part of the question around the budget?
Yes. So when I look at the budget for 2015, it says the estimated net operating balance for the Creative Hub on the first floor of 44 Gaukel is in brackets, which means that there's a $507,000 deficit.
Can you, this is on page
1-37.
Okay, so through the chair, the clarification is that the numbers in brackets are actually positive.
Okay. Then are you saying that the numbers that follow are in a negative then because they're not in brackets?
So, sorry. So what happens in the first year, because they're the capital expenses, that's the cost for the first year in 2019, 507, and then it goes into the positive after that.
That's what it means. So the 507 is a deficit.
No, the 507 is the revenue.
I think I've gotten confused. I'm sorry.
You've got me confused. Yes.
No, I've got myself confused as well. It's a surplus.
It's a surplus of $507,000. So then in 2020, at 119.6, what is that, a positive or is that a negative?
119.6.
Sorry, where is that? What line item are you referring to?
I'm on 1-37.
Okay.
Under 2020, estimated net operating balance for Creative Hub, and I'm looking at the bottom line. I'm kind of going by the way I've been taught by Mr. Chapman in the past. Brackets are negative and non are positive.
Go ahead, Mr.
So I see
Lautenbach.
the opposite here.
Through the chair, to clarify the information that's in the report, the $775,000 that is dedicated to be used for this purpose, and council have provided direction to do so in a previous report that came to council. That's being utilized in the first year to cover off the capital expenses, and it is also being used over the course of the 5 years to cover some of the operating expenses. So where you see in year 2, 3, 4, and 5, expenses are greater than the revenue that's being brought in during that time, but we are using some of the funding that was allocated for this purpose over that 5-year time frame. So over the 5 years, we are utilizing the full funds that are dedicated to this process, and that's what's reflected in the 5-year plan.
Okay, so we're sort of spreading it out over the... Okay, thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. I've lost about 4 minutes of my time figuring that one out. Can I have an extra minute there, Chair? We were talking about jobs in the region, over Canada, 630,000 jobs in the art sector, which doesn't sound like a lot when you think about the entire workforce. Can we figure out what that would be roughly in the region? I mean, because the graph shows only 3% on... Sorry, the page that I had marked was 1-29, that there's only 3% of creative industry workers. So do we have a number of, do we understand what the number of creative workers in the region would be based on what is existing happening and what could happen?
Through the chair. The purpose of this graph is to show that there, in Kitchener, Cambridge, Waterloo, there's the share of the workforce, the creative workforce is 3%. And we can quantify that in terms of the number if you'd like. We'd have to go back to the data. But I think what's important to notice is that we have comparable municipalities who have a significantly higher share of workers in the creative industries. And what this indicates to us is that there's room for growth to have a greater share of folks in the labor force employed in the creative industries.
Okay. So my next question, and I'm running out of time, is that I know that there's a large variety of spaces that are used throughout the city. So there's Fresh Ground and the Clay and Glass and the library and empty space. And I mean, you know them all. You're familiar with them. They've indicated to us over the last number of years that there's a gap. We think that now we're talking about a combination between arts and technology. And my worry is that the technology component, which is growing very fast, could all of a sudden take over that portion of 44 Gaukel that we want to set aside as the Arts Hub. How are we going to monitor that? How are we going to make sure that that space is dedicated to arts and culture?
Through the chair, what we've done on the second floor to date is that the agreement states that there is a split 50-50 of space between the Accelerator Center and Arts Build Ontario, and therefore arts and culture creative industry occupants. So moving into the first floor, it would be the same kind of rationale to understand that we are allocating a specific percentage of that space to creative industry use.
Okay. I know there's other people who want to ask questions, so I'll cue back in.
Certainly. Mr. Bloom, do you want to comment as well?
I was going to quickly add in, to me that is one of the main benefits of approaching this as a partnership model. If we simply rented the space out to one tenant and let the control of who the tenancy is in one agency, then you lose that ability. But I think by going at a partnership model, we, as a city, we get to make sure that in some regards that we would maintain that kind of balance.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, this is coming back to council when?
Sorry?
When is this coming back to council? Is it 2 weeks? Yeah. I have a ton of questions which I won't ask because I have enough time between now and council day. So, but I do want to ask 2 or 3 of them. I'd like to know what did we get from the sale of 48 Ontario Street? I'm just trying to see what money that has come into this pot. So what did we sell that for? Okay, well, move on.
Well, it's 50% proceeds, so it's 775 times 2.
So that was 50%.
Yes.
Okay. When we were last talking about this, there was a big question about the boiler, whether the boiler was going to make it till the next day or not. Where's the story on the boiler now? Where do we stand?
I asked that same question, Ms. McGoldrick.
You asked that?
No, I asked it, sorry, in private. Go ahead.
So through you, Chair, there are 2 boilers associated with the building, and they're both operational and rotate through in terms of their use. However, I believe Council will be aware that the estimated life of that boiler was until the end of 2017, so it certainly has extended beyond its useful life, but it is still functional.
Okay, but this is when we were discussing this the last time. The other thing, when we were really looking at all of this 2 years ago, and is it possible to get some more detailed information as to what has transpired over the past 2 years? What kind of revenues did we get? What kind of costs have we incurred? Details like that from our experience for the 2 years that we have been running it as an incubator. There's no information that I could see here.
That's a fair question, and hopefully that's something staff can have ready for us for council. Okay, very good.
Okay. There was one other on page 137. It talked about, this was on the budget. It talked about the EDR hub does not include the EDR hub allocation of 500,000. What does that mean? It's on page 137.
Mr. Bloom?
Through the chair, just to remind you that through the budget process, council identified notional allocations from the reserve for certain projects. So there is a line in there about to support incubator projects. I think there's about a 1.5 million in there for you guys to potentially use to support incubators moving forward. So we have not assigned that to this at this time. It could be a source if you wanted to go in future years, but we have not assigned it through this proposal.
So you're saying there's lots of money around. Is that what you're saying? That we haven't touched?
I don't know if that was quite my statement, but...
No, I'll take that back from it. So, no, okay, those are the only questions. I have a number of other questions, but I will send them to staff and I will circulate council with them.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Councillor Singh?
Yeah, I wasn't planning on asking a question, but because of the confusion related to the funding, I just wanted to ask questions that will help clarify for all of us, because I think what we see on 1-37 is fairly positive. So in terms, the bulk of the funding is coming from one half of the 48 Ontario Street, the $775,000, as well as the revenue that's anticipated. So over the 5 years, if you look at into 2023, in relative terms, we're expecting it to cost $70.
Expecting it to make $70.
Oh, make $70. It's brackets, you're right. Yeah. That's where the confusion was. We make $70.
Moderately priced dinner for two.
That's also, some questioning is related to the tax component of it. If in fact, because of the nature of what we're trying to do on the main floor, we could be successful in getting that subsidy on the property taxes on, I guess, the school board and the region component of it that we would be paying. Is that correct? That we would be still continue to explore that.
Ms. Robson?
Through the chair. Yes, we put a contingency, we put an amount in for the property tax, but it's possible that the uses of the space will be property tax exempt, so we've put it in there to be conservative in our estimations.
Which I very much hope, and we should really do all we can to be successful in that. And if we are, then we would be positive $234,181 plus the $70 already anticipated. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Good point. Mayor Rabinovich?
Are we into comments now, Mr. Chair?
I have Councillor Fernandez in the queue and Councillor Gazzola in the queue.
Okay.
Are you questions or comments? Yeah, sure. Councillor Fernandez, question? Yeah. Okay, so questions. Councillor Fernandez first, please.
Okay, so originally we were talking about practitioners. I believe it was Sam that was talking about. Did we engage some of those same practitioners when we started with the creative enterprise? I know, Emily, you weren't here, but I'm wondering if there's any staff that can, maybe that's a question that somebody can get back to me on before council. The other question I had is there's some lease agreements that were, part of the recommendation is that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute the lease agreements. Will council see those lease agreements before final decisions are made?
Mr. Bloom? Sir, I'm a little unclear on the question. Point of clarification, Mayor Rabinovich?
This is common language that we put in virtually all of our reports, so I'm not sure what...
Because this is, in my opinion, this is a bit of a different situation because we're putting in a lot of tax dollars, and I think that we need to have some understanding about some of these lease agreements that are coming forward. At least an understanding.
Well, the understanding, I think, is in the report, but anyway, I'll let the staff...
Yeah, so the answer to that would be no, Councillor Fernandez, I believe. Mr. Reedman?
Through the chair, that is correct. So council, in their governance role, is approving the principles for moving forward, and then the delegated authority is through legal to be satisfied with the lease agreements that fall in line with the recommendations being forward, and then the mayor signs that on council's behalf.
Because that was what was helping me make my decision. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola, question?
The question I forgot. When we were looking at this originally 2 years ago, one of the alternatives was to be considered was of selling the property and looking at development there. Did we get any answers on that alternative? I don't see any in this report.
It is referenced near the end of the report. There's a paragraph saying this is really like a 5-year sort of interim step and that they will be looking at that at that time.
So, okay, and I saw that, but so we've done 2 years, now we're going to do another 5, and it looks like this is going to go even further. So is that whole question of possible sale and development out now? Isn't that an alternative we should be considering when we're dealing with issues like this? We need to consider all of the alternatives.
And I would say it's council's prerogative to consider that at this point, but we did consider it not terribly long ago, and it's our decision whether we want to continue with this interim step or not.
Okay, one final question. This whole question of property taxes, if we drop the 234 here, it's not a big gain to us because it means our tax pot loses 234.
I don't believe so. I'd look to staff to confirm, but we're talking about saving the school board taxes and regional taxes. Mr. Lautenbach?
Through the chair, again, as identified in the report, it would depend on obviously the use of the space. If it was for educational purposes, obviously there's some PILs that potentially we would get associated with that. There is, but again, it depends on the use, and so that's why in the report it clarifies that as a conservative estimate, the property taxes were left in as an amount, and it would be determined once the use has been determined in terms of the space.
Yeah. If property taxes go down from somebody paying it, somebody has to pick it up. The rest of the taxpayers have to pick it up. Oh.
Okay, Councillor Marsh.
Comments?
Comment?
Yeah.
Okay, actually, if you could just queue back in. Councillor Yaneski, comment or question? Question, Councillor Yaneski.
Yeah, thank you. Page 15, there's a comment or a statement in there that talks about there's evidence the need for a space for approximately 40,000 square feet. What's the floor area of that first floor?
Ms. Robson?
Through the chair, it's 10,000 square feet, the first floor.
10,000 square feet. So there's a greater demand, 4 times the amount, basically, you're saying. So with the waiting list, that's the following statement. If you occupy that first floor, you'll still have a huge waiting list then? Is that the intent, depending on what organizations, how much room they need?
Through the chair, there is a demonstrated need for space, and we see it in a variety of capacities throughout the community. So what this statement is indicating is that we know there's a need for space for these types of activities, and whether it's accommodated at this facility or elsewhere in the community, it's a prerogative to try to sort that out in the coming years.
Okay. Are there any groups in there that you feel that should be pushed out to bring in new people, or is just sort of like, do they sort of stay there until, I don't know, whenever?
Ms. Robson?
Through the chair. The second floor at this point has been in use since September of 2016, so we're not even at 2 full years at this point. So I think it's premature to say whether or not people have overstayed their welcome, and there has been natural turnover. So as businesses have grown, as we've heard with the Accelerator Center, or as organizations have changed, there's already been some natural turnover. So at this point, that's not been our experience, that there's been anyone who should not be there who's there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there are no further questions in the queue. I do have 4 people with comments. As I mentioned, we have 6+ delegations have been waiting for 40 minutes. So I am going to reserve my personal comments for council, and I would encourage others, if they do wish to speak now, to please try and keep it as brief as possible, beginning with Mayor Vabenovich.
Thank you very much, and I will keep it brief. And I would hope, and I'll start off by saying that I'm going to ask for a recorded vote, and I would hope that this is something that we can support unanimously around this horseshoe. I think, council has many times spoken about their desire to see us grow in the beyond just the tech and innovation sector, but also look at ways of growing in the arts and culture sector as well. And the reality is, in the world that surrounds us, the whole area of arts and culture, especially as it relates to STEM, the transition from STEM to STEAM is key. And it's key both in terms of seeing the cultural sector obtain the advantages of those collisions and the interactions that happen, and the reality that, quite frankly, technology is significantly impacting arts and culture. And one just needs to, and again, I referenced last night, I was at a Sheepdog Animation, and have seen what 11-year-old kids in our community are doing and winning global awards, competing against tens of thousands of other entries from around the world. And it's incumbent on us as a community to continue to support this. We've seen the private sector coming to the table. We saw the announcement earlier today of a company like BMO coming to the table with $1 million and giving first right of refusal to the museum, because we see the benefits that come out of those kinds of investments. And it's important for us to continue to take these steps so that we can leverage opportunities from the private sector, from other levels of government, and continue to see all of our partners, really seeing their boats all rise to a new level, and see our community continue to see the success and growth that it's experienced. Other communities, quite frankly, are aggressively aggressively pursuing these kinds of initiatives. It's time for us to, particularly when it comes to arts and culture, step up and do our part, or quite frankly, stop talking about it being a priority for this council and this community.
Thank you. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it brief as well. Just to say that, first of all, I think we have a beautiful thing here. Let's support it. I would love to see a unanimous vote on this one, because we really do have lucked out on this synergy that is created at the 44 Gaukel. I'd also like to see our staff be able to find ways to support the development of goals and an evaluation structure to see how this pilot has evolved and continues to evolve, so that we can respond to the needs and understand where we're trying to go as we go. I'm not suggesting that be brought back to council on a quarterly basis or anything, but that we find a way that suits the Gaukelites, but also that helps us to understand the identity of 44 Gaukel from a public-facing perspective as well. We need to understand, what is working and what is not, and how can we adapt and grow. And just finally, I think that to echo the mayor's comments, we absolutely need to as a council, be bolder than we have been and continue to support the arts and the creative industries. I really don't see any other way for our council other than to really find this is just a win-win situation. I think we need to look forward to also increasing the dialogue between the creative industry sectors and the tech sector. We see this happening beautifully now, but we need to really find ways to encourage and support this type of conversation that can only lead to collisions of ideas that will benefit financially, but also benefit our community, our society as a whole. Let's see that happen. I for one am interested to find ways to support these conversations as we go forward, and I'm happy to support this amendment. I think we can that it's a no-brainer.
Thank you. Councillor Hernandez.
Thank you, Chair Davey. When we looked at this a year and a half ago, creating an arts hub, and when we came back with the results that we had, I was incredibly disappointed. But when I look at it today, I think we got a way better option. The fact that we'll probably make $70, I know it's nothing significant, but by the end of it, that's an achievement. Where before we were probably looking at losing dollars. So the other thing too that kind of raises to me like what an achievement that it is that to have a facility like this that's really the one and only one in Ontario. This is kind of rather remarkable to me, and that it's been growing grassroots levels. It's just wow. And it's all happening here. And if we can give it a leg up and support it, then I think we should all do it, because it all, like everything that I ever hear from council over the years is that we need to support the arts. We are constantly underfunding the arts. It's in all of the documents that we've went through, Environics, Compass Kitchener. Everyone's always stating about the arts, and this is part of our contribution, and I think it's a really wise contribution.
Thank you. Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'll be very short. There should be a unanimous support for this, because we have to give a resounding yes to a commitment to our arts community, yes to supporting the creative economy, yes to ensuring that the maturing tech sector continues to succeed in this region as it has. And, like Councillor Ioannidis has said, when we looked at the Creative Hub model, we talked about and we supported us investing $775,000. And now we're going to do that very thing, create an arts hub, while it's going to cost nothing, where we have potentially, a potential to make relative to $200,000 if we can be successful in arguing for the property tax component. It just would make no sense if we don't support this, because this is truly everything that we talk around this horseshoe, creating a vibrant, creative, amazing place to live while supporting our economy at the same time. Why wouldn't we do this?
Thank you. Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Chair Davey. I'm really encouraged by the comments I'm hearing from my fellow councillors. I will be supporting the amendment because I also want to see this hub keep going and be sustainable. This is about innovation, whether it's in the arts or technology, and coming together. I think it's great. We've heard some great success stories today. I talk about, giving value for our tax dollars and the value of the art that is created, the messages that we're hearing from Greenlight about the groups that they've been able to help get a message out to it and maybe educate and inform and change and inspire. I think it's amazing. There's not a value you can put on seeing a great musical performance, a great stage performance, by being inspired by seeing an art exhibition. We're providing the encouragement and the impetus for this, and I think it's incredible, and I can't wait to support it.
Thank you. Councillor Fernandez.
Thank you. So we've heard from amazing people today who have really committed their lives to the arts and to culture, to theatre, to performing, and it's hard not to get caught up in that enthusiasm. And I think there's a lot of partnerships and a lot of opportunity to be made as we move forward. A little bit concerned when I hear somebody saying it costs us nothing, because it does cost us something. I think that we're going to be putting money into the lease.
Point of clarification, Councillor Singh.
Again, the table, the financials do speak to it not costing us anything. In fact, coming $70 positive. And again, I have to repeat the same thing. We do have the potential of hopefully being successful in the tax conversation with it, in which case we'll be very ahead in this endeavor.
Okay, thank you. I think the notes on page 1-7 speak for themselves. Councillor Fernandez, please.
1- what? Did you say?
1-7 in the report. No problem. Point of clarification.
Point of clarification, it is costing the city money. It's costing us over, I don't have the exact number, but over $800,000 to do this. So I want to be clear, at the end of the day, we come out ahead, but we have to put in the $775,000 plus the $35,000 from the accessibility fund, and there's a few other things. So I do want to be clear.
Okay. We're talking about different things, but whether it's initial investment versus over a period of time in terms of the repayment. But I'll let Councillor Fernandez continue.
Still coming out of a pot of money that could be used for other things. So I will carry on. As I look through the report, some of the things that concern me is the list of risks on page 137. And the reason I'm 130. The reason I'm pointing that out is I don't want to see all of these groups and these partnerships that will grow over the next 5 years, and somewhere in between, the boiler goes, or we have a maintenance issue, or those are important risks. We're talking about the life standard of the facility. We're talking about major building components, and I know some of them are high and the impact, or medium, but the impact to those groups is high, and I don't want to leave them stranded. I think there's a great collision and a great opportunity here that we can move forward through. I think that we can also consider the fact that many other groups may be listening to this and saying, well, what about us in sports? Well, what about us in the environment? What about us for community centers? What about us for pools? So, those are also groups that we hear about on a regular basis, and we have to keep that in mind. I'm going to take the time between now and council to reread the report and ponder a little bit more. I think I want to give full support on this. I really think it's important. We've talked about this many times, and every time community groups come to us and ask us for money, Pat the Dog is one. Janice Lee has stood here before us. Registry Theatre, JM Productions, they've all come here and talked about the need for the city to support. But where's the region on this? Where's Cambridge on this? And where's Waterloo in this? Because all of the artists and all of the people that have spoken today don't just come from Kitchener. You come from the region, and I think we have to be looking to them as a partner in this as well. So today I'm going to say no, but I'm going to take time over the next couple of weeks to ponder this a bit more and maybe ask a few more questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gazzola.
Yeah, I also am coming here without a brain, so I just want to make it very clear that it is costing our taxpayers over $800,000. Okay, and I'm not saying it's not a good spend or what have you, but it's not a free lunch. Because coming out of the reserve is costing our taxpayers money. I mean, we can't sugarcoat that, and maybe money very well spent, but it is costing us that. I just want to quickly go over a few things. I know when I was much younger and I had children in school, they were able to do a lot of creative and artistic things. They used to be able to get involved in creative activities, school concerts and all of that. That's been really almost flushed totally out of our school system. There's no more time for that anymore. And we've let that happen, and we really haven't said anything. And there's where creativity starts. Just a few years ago, this current federal government came in, and we used to have a program that provided a little bit of tax relief to our citizens who had children involved in not only recreational but also artistic programs. And they got a little bit of a tax break from having our children enrolled in that, and our government of the day seemed more interested in promoting marijuana and did away with that little bit of a benefit. Now we're looking for the local taxpayer to pick up this cost. Okay, at this point in time, I still have a lot of questions that have not been answered. I wanted to see what has happened over the 2 years that we've been in place. I'd like to know, what other alternatives are there? I don't think all of that information has been presented. I've done a lot of research on it, and there's much more to do. I will study for the next 2 weeks. But excuse me, at this point, I'm not in a position to support. I'm losing my voice on top of my brains. I'm not in a position to support either the adjustment before us or the original motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Galway-Seelock.
If I may, I didn't ask this question because I didn't know there was going to be this much confusion on it. But can I quickly ask staff, it'll be within the realm of my time allotment here, what is the overall cost to the city?
Mr. Bloom.
Through the chair, Councillor Galway-Seelock, your depiction of the cost is accurate. That
Okay.
if not for the funding that we would be receiving from the sale of 48 Ontario, we would not see the surplus at the end of 5 years.
Okay, thank you for that. I didn't want to sit here silent on the issue because I didn't want the opinion to be that I wasn't interested. It's actually the complete opposite. I was totally interested, and I felt the report spoke for itself and that the delegations were very clear in their opinions and where they stood and what they believed was a benefit to our community. So it wasn't that I wasn't interested. I sat on the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee 12 years ago, or for a number of years, 12 years ago. And Culture Plan 1 was calling for this, Culture Plan 2 was calling for this. We're finally kind of getting there. So, after all these years of talking about it, it's time to do it. So let's continue to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Yuniesky.
Yeah, I was quite impressed by the presentation of the various delegations and the emotion and the desire for them to move forward and have this continue on. And I do support the arts, and it's very, very good that where they're coming from, they need support. But I do hear concerns from my colleagues about the costs and what's the actual bottom line, and some unanswered questions. So I guess to be one of those dilemmas where you flip a coin, where you go with it or you don't go with it. I know at this point in time, I'm prepared to support it, but yet I have my reservations. I want to get some more answers that hopefully will be coming in the next couple of weeks.
Thank you. I want to close out by I'm a little bit worried too about the clarification on the finances. I just want to ask one final question. There's been some talk about the taxpayer. I would like to ask staff very quickly, how does this impact the rates? How will the taxpayer be affected by this decision if it's approved? Mr. Bloom. Sorry, and let's just assume that your 5-year estimate is correct.
So through the chair, at this point, there's no expected ask for operating funding, if that's what you're asking for. The funding to support us doing this for 5 years is coming from the land sale of, primarily from the land sale of 48 Ontario. There may be some other expenses, but generally speaking, that is the main source of funding that will support this.
So property tax impact is zero?
Generally speaking, that's the intention. That's certainly our goal.
Okay, I want to be clear on that point. Thank you. I just wanted to, I want to start by thanking Ms. Robson, Ms. DiDonato for coming up with a practical solution. Whenever I always get a little bit worried when I hear about supporting arts and culture, if I'm being honest, because usually there's a huge price tag associated with it. I do want to compliment, I know Council had a role in this as well, in identifying the proceeds from a building that we no longer needed to pay for this, so we do not have to go to the taxpayer to pay for it. And that funding, some of it should be repaid over time, especially if the tax implications work with some of the tax exemptions. So something that at the end of the day, after that disposal of land, that building will cost the taxpayers nothing, and we still get to support the tech art community, is something that I am happy to support. With that, I think a recorded vote has been called. We will vote on the amendment first by Councillor Singh. Point of clarification, Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I think it's important to understand that it does cost the taxpayers something. We gave up an asset and got money for it, and it does cost the taxpayers something because we have $775,000 set aside to pay for this. So no, it doesn't increase the tax levy, but it does cost the taxpayer because that's money we could use elsewhere if we didn't put it here.
Okay, recorded vote, Councillor Singh. Councillor Singh's vote, amendment, in front of this. Those in favor? And opposed? And the main motion, as moved by Councillor Ioannidis. Sorry? Yeah, as moved by Councillor Ioannidis. No, Ioannidis. Sorry, I'm trying to talk quickly. I know there's a lot of people waiting for us. Those in favor? And opposed? And that motion carries. Just before we move on, I'm going to move to Mayor Rabinovich.
Thank you, Chair Davey, and I know we're tight on time, but I do want to just take a couple moments to recognize someone whose final council meeting is today, and that's Sylvia DiDonato. For those of you who don't know, she will be retiring at the end of this week. And I thought it was only appropriate to take a couple of moments to reflect on her time with us. She's actually been with the city on 2 different occasions, originally with planning, and then went out back to the private sector, and then has returned for the last 14 years as the manager of downtown, the manager of business development, and the manager of arts and creative industries. She's played a significant role in the implementation of numerous EDIF projects, was instrumental in the initial conversion of the boathouse from a canoe storage to a musical venue, and launched Music Works, which made Kitchener one of the first cities to do so and became a model for other cities that then followed. I think what's really interesting to note is in particular in relation to the item that we just dealt with. And Sylvia, in fact, was the very first champion some 10 years ago about the creation of a digital media hub at 44 Gaukel, and she's been involved in bringing key players together. And some of that has actually also impacted the work that's happened at Communitech Hub as well. So Sylvia, as you move on to your new life in retirement and whatever adventures it brings forward on behalf of the city, thank you for your many years of service to the community and for what you've done to help build arts and culture in the city of Kitchener. All the best.
Okay, with that, we will get to our final item. Hopefully we can get through it fairly quickly. It's pretty straightforward. The BIA extension, there's no staff presentation, so I'll take any questions from committee on this. Moved by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. I'm not. Councillor Gazzola?
I just have a question. It says that this will go on until the ION is operational. What does operational mean?
Mr. Bloom?
Through the chair, the trains are running and you can board it and you can ride it.
Pardon me, no further questions. Been moved by Councillor Galloway-Seelock. Those in favor? And opposed? One opposed. The motion carries. So we will recess, and as soon as we can get the system switched over, we'll get going, okay? Adjourned, pardon me.